It was doubt teachers began questioning everything more seriously. What I had revealed during the assembly didn't just affect my situation, it made them look deeper into his behavior. It didn't take long for things to catch up to him. One morning his name was called to the office. He didn't come back. No announcement was made, but everyone understood what had happened. The model student image he had built was gone, replaced by the truth he couldn't hide anymore. Alone's situation was different. She stayed, but staying wasn't easy. She became quiet more than before. The same people who once trusted her now kept their distance. She wasn't blamed as strongly as Thayer, but she wasn't seen the same way either. Her silence had cost her more than she expected. One afternoon she approached me. I saw her before she spoke. She looked nervous, unsure, like she had been thinking about this moment for a long time. When she finally stood in front of me, her voice was soft, almost shaking. She said she was sorry, not just for going along with everything, but for not stopping it when she had the chance. She admitted she knew it was wrong, but she was afraid of being alone, afraid of losing the one person she chose to stand beside. I listened. I didn't interrupt. I didn't react the way she expected. I just let her speak, because for a long time I had wanted to hear those words, but now they felt different. The pain she caused didn't disappear just because she apologized. The nights I spent questioning myself, the way I lost everyone around me, the way I was treated, it all stayed with me. When she finished, she looked at me, waiting for something, maybe forgiveness, maybe understanding, but I couldn't give her that, not because I wanted revenge anymore, but because I had changed. I told her I understood why she did it, but that didn't make it right, and it didn't erase what happened. Some choices have consequences that apologies can't fix. She nodded slowly, like she already knew that. Then she walked away. That was the last real conversation we had. After that, things settled into a new kind of normal. People spoke to me again, slowly, carefully. Some even apologized for believing the rumors, but I didn't expect anything from them anymore. I had learned something important. Not everyone who stands beside you is truly on your side, and sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones who teach you that lesson the hardest. After everything, I realized that Briar Ridge had given me more than just a harsh lesson about trust. It had given me strength, the kind of strength you can't get from a classroom or a textbook. It came from surviving betrayal, facing lies, and standing up for myself when no one else would. Life returned to a quiet rhythm. Classes continued, activities went on, and students moved about the campus as if nothing had happened. But I knew better. I had seen behind the perfect surface, and I wasn't fooled anymore. I learned to watch carefully, to question quietly, and to protect myself in ways I never had to before. Thayer was gone from the school, expelled for his actions. The students who had followed him shifted their attention elsewhere, but the lesson lingered. People didn't trust him the way they once did, and neither did anyone else. Alone stayed, but she had changed too. Her silence and absence of true support made her almost invisible. She no longer held the same place in anyone's life, and I didn't need her to. I focused on myself. I studied harder. I spoke more confidently, and I built relationships cautiously, aware that trust wasn't something to give blindly. I still remembered the late-night talks and the moments I thought were safe, but I also remembered the betrayal. I carried that memory not as a burden, but as a guide, a warning, and a reminder that I could survive anything. Boarding schools promise discipline, education, and growth, but they never warn you about the emotional battles that happen in the quiet moments behind doors, in whispers, and between friendships. Some of the hardest lessons are about people, not academics. I learned that the people you trust can hurt you the most, and yet surviving that hurt is what shapes you into someone stronger. I left Briar Ridge knowing I had been through something no book could teach me. I learned to read people, to protect myself, and to rise above situations that would have crushed me before. I understood that betrayal can come from the closest of friends, and revenge doesn't always mean retaliation. It can mean reclaiming your life, your voice, and your confidence. By the time I graduated, I wasn't the same Callan Mercer who arrived on the first day. I was stronger, wiser, and more careful with whom I let into my life. I had survived the betrayals, exposed the lies, and walked away with my dignity intact. I realized that the greatest lesson boarding schools never tell you isn't in the curriculum. It's learning who to trust, who to believe, and how to stand on your own when the world turns against you. Some scars never fade, but some scars teach you how to stand taller than before, and that's exactly what I did. This was my story, what Briar Ridge didn't tell anyone. If I moved too fast, I could miss something. If I showed even the smallest sign that I was onto them, they would become more careful. So I stayed patient. On the outside, nothing changed. I was still the quiet student everyone ignored, still the one people whispered about, still the one they believed was already defeated. But inside, everything was different. I wasn't lost anymore. I was building something, and the more I gathered, the more confident I became that when the moment came, there would be no way for them to escape what they had done. All I needed now was the right time. The right moment came sooner than I expected. The school announced a full assembly. Everyone would be there, students, teachers, staff. It was one of the few times when the entire school gathered in one place. As soon as I heard about it, I knew this was it. If I wanted the truth to be seen, it had to happen there. For days I prepared quietly. I went over everything I had collected, making sure it was clear, organized, and impossible to deny. Every detail had to connect, every piece had to support the next. I couldn't leave room for doubt. When the day arrived, I felt calm, not nervous, not scared, just ready. The assembly hall was full. Voices filled the room, students talking, laughing, unaware of what was about to happen. I sat quietly waiting, watching. Thayer stood with a group of students near the front, confident as always. Aloan was beside him, quieter but still close. They had no idea when the assembly began. Everything followed the usual routine: announcements, speeches, the same structured order. I waited patiently, my moment getting closer with each passing minute. Then I stood up. At first no one paid attention. I was just another student, but when I stepped forward and spoke, the room slowly went quiet. My voice wasn't loud, but it was steady. I started with the truth, not emotions, not accusations, facts. I spoke about the rumors, how they started, how they spread, and how they connected. I shared the patterns I had noticed, the details that didn't match the stories people believed. At first there was confusion in the room. People didn't understand what I was doing. Then I brought everything together. I revealed how the information used in the rumors came from private conversations, things only a few people could have known. I explained how those details were twisted and passed around in a way that made them seem real, and then I named them. Thayer, Aloan. The room shifted instantly. All eyes turned toward them. The same people who once listened to them without question were now watching, waiting. Thayer tried to stay calm, but for the first time I saw uncertainty in his expression. Aloan looked frozen, her face pale. I didn't stop. I continued, laying out everything clearly, how the stories changed, how they were repeated, how they were guided. I didn't shout, I didn't rush. I simply told the truth in a way that couldn't be ignored. Teachers stepped in, asking questions, looking at both sides, but this time things were different. This time there was something to look at, something to examine. The whispers in the room changed direction now. They weren't about me, they were about them. Thayer tried to speak, to defend himself, but his words didn't carry the same weight anymore. The confidence he once had was gone. Aloan looked like she wanted to say something, but nothing came out. For the first time since everything started, I wasn't the one being judged, they were. And as I stood there watching everything unfold, I realized something: the truth doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be seen. After that day, everything changed. The same halls that once felt suffocating became strangely quiet, not because people had stopped talking, but because now they didn't know what to say. The rumors that once followed me disappeared almost overnight, replaced by a different kind of silence. People avoided Thayer. The confidence he once carried was gone. He no longer stood at the center of attention. Instead, he walked alone, the same way I used to. Some students whispered when he passed by, but this time it wasn't admiration. I stayed silent, kept my distance, and let everyone believe I was still broken. It wasn't hard. People already saw me that way. Thayer ignored me like I didn't exist, and Aloan barely looked at me anymore. To them, I was no longer a problem. That was exactly what I needed. At night, things were different. I started paying attention to everything. I listened carefully to conversations around me, watched how people behaved, and noticed things I had ignored before. Briar Ridge wasn't as perfect as it looked beneath the rules and discipline. There were cracks, secrets people didn't talk about, and Thayer was part of those secrets. He had a reputation as a model student, but I began to see another side of him: the way he manipulated people, the way he controlled situations without anyone noticing. It wasn't new, he had done this before, just never to someone who pushed back. I didn't rush. I knew I needed more than just what I heard that night. I needed proof, something solid, something no one could deny. So I started collecting it's small things. At first I wrote down what I noticed, who said what when things happened. I kept track of patterns in the rumors and how they spread. I paid attention to who repeated them the most and how they connected back to Thayer. Then I got more careful. I stayed near places where conversations happened, not close enough to be seen but close enough to hear. I learned how to move quietly, how to observe without drawing attention. It felt strange at first, like I had become someone else, but I didn't stop, because now I had a purpose. Aloan was harder to understand. Sometimes she looked like she wanted to say something to me, like guilt was eating at her, but she never acted on it. She stayed by Thayer's side, choosing silence every time I stopped expecting anything from her. Trust was gone completely. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, I built something stronger than just anger. I built certainty. Piece by piece, I gathered enough to see the full picture, not just what they did to me, but how they did it. And once I saw that clearly, I knew exactly what I had to do. This wasn't about revenge in the way I first imagined. I didn't want to hurt them the way they hurt me. I wanted something else. I wanted the truth to be seen, not whispered, not denied, exposed, and I was going to make sure it happened in a way they could never control, the same way they once controlled everything around me. By then I had enough to understand how everything worked, but understanding wasn't enough. I needed something solid, something that couldn't be explained away with excuses or lies, so I became more careful than ever. I started keeping track of exact moments when Thayer spoke to certain students, when new rumors suddenly appeared, and how quickly they spread. It wasn't random, there was always a pattern. He would plant an idea in the right place and others would carry it forward without even realizing it. I wrote everything down in a small notebook. I kept hidden names, dates, conversations. Every detail mattered. At first it felt like I was just holding on to pieces, but over time those pieces began to connect. Then I took it a step further. I began staying close enough to hear more direct conversations. I chose my spots carefully: quiet hallways, corners near common rooms, places where people felt comfortable speaking freely. I didn't interrupt, didn't react, I just listened. More than once I heard Thayer guiding others without making it obvious. He never said things directly. Instead, he suggested ideas, made small comments, and let others draw their own conclusions. That's what made it so effective. No one felt like they were being told what to think, but I knew better. I also noticed how Aloan fit into all of this. She didn't lead anything, but her silence gave everything permission to continue. When people questioned things, she would gently steer the conversation away or stay neutral. That quiet support made the lies feel more believable. Seeing that clearly hurt, but it also made things easier. I stopped seeing them as the people I once cared about. Now they were just part of the truth I needed to reveal. I knew I couldn't rely only on what I heard. People could deny words, they could twist conversations. I needed something stronger, so I started finding ways to confirm what I already knew. I paid attention to school records, group activities, and situations where stories didn't match reality. When someone claimed I had cheated, I made sure to note the actual results and timing. When they said I had taken something, I quietly checked where it really was and who had access to it. Every lie had a weakness, and slowly I collected those weaknesses. I didn't rush the process. That was important. Now I had lost the only people who mattered. That loss changed something in me. I stopped expecting things to go back to how they were. I stopped hoping for explanations or apologies. Instead, I started paying attention quietly, carefully. If no one was going to tell me the truth, I would find it myself. I began noticing small things: how certain students repeated the same stories, how those stories sounded too exact, too consistent. I watched how Thayer interacted with others, how easily he blended in, how people seemed to trust him without question. I noticed how Aloan stayed close to him, now rarely alone, like she was tied to whatever he was doing. The more I observed, the clearer things became. This wasn't random, it wasn't a misunderstanding, it was planned. And the closer I got to that truth, the more something inside me shifted. The sadness was still there, but it was changing into something colder, something more focused. I wasn't just hurt anymore, I wanted answers. One night, everything finally made sense. I couldn't sleep, so I left the dorm quietly and walked outside. The air was cold and the campus was almost silent. I didn't have a reason to be out there, I just needed to clear my head. But as I passed near the back of the dormitory, I heard voices. At first I wasn't paying attention, but then I heard my name. I froze. The voices were familiar. I moved closer, careful not to make any noise, and stood behind the wall where they couldn't see me. My heart was beating fast, but I forced myself to stay still and listen. It was Thayer and Aloan. They weren't arguing, they were laughing. Thayer sounded relaxed, almost proud. He was talking about how easy it had been to turn people against me. He mentioned the rumors like they were nothing, just simple stories that people were ready to believe without question. He even joked about how I had tried to defend myself, calling it pathetic. Each word felt like a hit. Then Aloan spoke. Her voice wasn't as confident, but she didn't deny anything. She admitted she knew what was happening from the beginning. She said she didn't want things to go this far, but she went along with it anyway. That hurt more than anything. Thayer asked her why she didn't stop it. There was a pause before she answered. She said she didn't want to lose him. She was afraid that if she went against him, she would be alone too. Hearing that broke something inside me. All those moments I had trusted them, all the things I shared, they had used it against me. It wasn't an accident, it wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a choice. I stood there unable to move as they continued talking, like nothing mattered, like I didn't matter. In that moment something changed completely. The confusion was gone, the doubt disappeared. There was no more questioning, no more hoping for a different explanation. I had the truth now, clear and undeniable, and it hurt more than anything I had ever felt. But along with that pain came something else: clarity. I quietly stepped away before they could notice me. My hands were shaking, but my mind felt strangely calm. For the first time in weeks I wasn't lost. I knew exactly what had happened and who was responsible. I returned to my room and sat in the dark, replaying everything I had just heard. Their voices, their laughter, their words, it all stayed with me. I Didn't cry, I didn't react the way I thought I would. Instead, I felt something colder settling in. They had taken everything from me, trust, my reputation, my place in that school, and they did it without guilt, without hesitation. That night I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront them. I wasn't going to beg for the truth or ask for an explanation. I was going to do something else. I was going to make sure the truth came out in a way they could never escape. After that night, I stopped feeling like a victim. The pain was still there, but it no longer controlled me. Instead of reacting, I became quiet, focused. I realized something important. If I acted too soon, they would deny everything and turn it back on me. I had already seen how easily people believed them. I couldn't risk that again, so I waited. During the day, I played my part. But this time it was worse because I had already known what it felt like to belong, and now that feeling was slipping away for reasons I couldn't understand. The rumors didn't stop, they grew louder, heavier, like something I couldn't escape. No matter where I went, every hallway, every classroom, every quiet corner of the school carried the same feeling. People talking about me, judging me without even asking the truth. I started noticing how differently everyone treated me. Students who once greeted me now ignored me completely. Some even moved away when I sat near them, like I was someone to avoid. It felt like I had done something terrible, even though I knew I hadn't. Classes became harder to sit through. I could feel eyes on me, hear faint whispers followed by quiet laughter. Even teachers began to look at me with suspicion. They didn't say anything directly, but their tone changed. They watched me more closely, like they were waiting for me to make a mistake. I tried to defend myself at first. When someone mentioned the cheating rumor, I explained that it wasn't true. When I heard someone say I had stolen something, I denied it, but no matter what I said, it didn't seem to matter. The stories had already spread too far. It was like my voice didn't count anymore. What made it worse was the way the rumors felt so personal. They weren't random lies made by strangers. They sounded like someone had taken things I had shared in confidence and twisted them into something ugly. Small details, private moments, things only a few people knew. That thought stayed in my mind, growing stronger each day. I started watching more carefully. I paid attention to how people reacted to what they said when they thought I wasn't listening, and slowly a pattern began to form. The rumors always connected back to moments I had shared with Thayer and Aloan. I didn't want to believe it. I kept telling myself there had to be another explanation. Maybe someone overheard us, maybe things were misunderstood. I held on to those thoughts because the truth felt too painful to accept. One evening I tried talking to Thayer again. I asked him directly if he had heard the rumors and what he thought about them. He avoided my eyes, giving short answers that didn't really say anything. His calm voice, the one that used to reassure me, now felt distant and empty. That conversation left me with more questions than answers. Later I found Aloan sitting alone. I told her everything I was feeling, the confusion, the anger, the fear of being judged for something I didn't do. My voice wasn't as steady as I wanted it to be. I needed her to understand, to support me like she always had. She listened quietly, but something about her reaction felt off. She didn't argue, didn't comfort me the way she used to. She just nodded like she already knew everything I was saying. That moment stayed with me long after I walked away. For the first time I started to question the two people I trusted most, not because I wanted to, but because nothing else made sense anymore. And deep down, a thought began to form, one I wasn't ready to face yet. What if the people I trusted were the ones behind everything? By then the feeling of being watched and judged had become part of my daily life. I stopped trying to fight it. It was exhausting to explain myself over and over when no one wanted to listen, so I went quiet. I kept my head down in class, avoided eye contact, and spoke only when necessary. The same halls that once felt new and full of possibility now felt heavy and suffocating. Every step reminded me that I didn't belong there anymore. The worst part wasn't the students, it was the silence from the people who used to stand beside me. Thayer no longer acted like my roommate. He was just someone who shared the same space. He came in late, left early, and barely acknowledged me when we did cross paths. It felt awkward, like we were strangers forced into the same room. I kept waiting for him to say something, to explain, to at least act like he cared, but he never did. Aloan's distance hurt even more. She didn't avoid me completely, but she wasn't the same. Her kindness felt forced now, like she was trying to keep things from falling apart without actually fixing anything. Sometimes she would start to say something, then stop herself. It was like she was trapped between guilt and fear. I didn't push her anymore. I didn't have the energy. Nights became the hardest when everything was quiet. My thoughts got louder. I kept replaying every moment, every conversation, trying to figure out where things went wrong. I questioned myself constantly. Did I say something wrong? Did I trust too much? Was this somehow my fault? That kind of thinking slowly eats you from the inside. There were moments when I almost believed the rumors myself. When enough people treat you like you're guilty, you start to feel like maybe you are. It's a strange kind of pain, losing trust, not just in others, but in yourself. One night, I sat alone in the dorm staring at the ceiling, feeling completely empty. I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit before. I was completely alone again, but this time it felt deeper. Before, I didn't know anyone. My name is Callan Mercer, and the day I arrived at Briar Ridge boarding school, I believed I was stepping into a better future. My parents told me this place would make me stronger, smarter, and more disciplined. The campus looked perfect: clean buildings, quiet halls, and students who seemed focused and confident, but something about it felt cold, like everything was too controlled, too quiet. On my first day, I met my roommate Thayer Knox. He didn't talk much at first, but he had this calm way about him that made me feel at ease. He helped me settle and showed me around, and even stood up for me when a senior tried to make fun of me for being new. That moment made me trust him. I thought I had found someone who would look out for me in a place where I knew no one. A few days later, I met Aloan Price. She was different from everyone else. While most students kept their distance, she smiled easily and spoke with kindness. She noticed when I was struggling to adjust and would sit with me during meals so I wouldn't feel alone. Talking to her felt natural, like I didn't have to pretend to be someone else. Slowly, the three of us started spending more time together. We studied in the library, shared snacks at night, and talked about our lives before coming here. Those moments became the only parts of the day I truly looked forward to. In a place that felt strict and unfamiliar, they became my comfort. I began to open up in ways I never had before. I told them about my fears, my doubts, and the pressure I felt to succeed. Thayer listened quietly, sometimes giving advice in his calm voice. Aloan always understood, her words soft but meaningful. They made me feel seen, like I mattered. As time passed, it felt like we were more than just friends. We were like a small family, holding each other together in a place that didn't care about feelings. I trusted them completely. I believed they would never hurt me, no matter what happened. Looking back now, I realize how quickly I gave them that trust. One didn't question anything. I didn't notice the small things. I should have. I was just grateful not to be alone anymore. At Briar Ridge, everyone is searching for a place to belong. When you finally find people who make you feel safe, you hold on tightly. That's exactly what I did. I held on to Thayer and Aloan, believing they were the best thing that had happened to me there. I didn't know that the same people who made me feel safe would one day become the reason I questioned everything about myself. At first, nothing felt wrong. Our routine stayed the same, and from the outside everything looked normal, but slowly small changes started to appear, so small that I almost ignored them. Thayer, who used to sit with me every evening, began making excuses. He said he had extra work or that he needed time alone. When we did talk, his answers were shorter, his tone colder. He no longer shared his thoughts the way he used to. It felt like there was a wall between us that hadn't been there before. Aloan changed too, but in a different way. She still smiled, still spoke kindly, but something in her eyes felt distant. Sometimes I would catch her looking at me like she wanted to say something, but then she would quickly look away. When I asked if everything was okay, she would just say she was tired. I told myself I was overthinking. Boarding school was stressful, and everyone needed space. Sometimes I didn't want to believe anything was wrong, so I chose to trust them like I always had. Then the whispers started. At first it was just a few students talking quietly when I walked by. I didn't think much of it, but soon the looks became more obvious. People stared at me in the hallways. Conversations stopped when I entered a room. It felt like I was being watched, judged for something I didn't understand. One afternoon, I overheard two students talking behind me. They mentioned my name and laughed. I turned around, asking what was so funny, but they just walked away without answering. That moment stayed with me. It didn't feel like a joke. It felt like something was being said about me that I didn't know. The rumors spread quickly after that. I started hearing things, small pieces. At first someone said I cheated on a test, another said I took something that didn't belong to me. None of it was true. I had never done anything like that, but the more I denied it, the less people seemed to believe me. What hurt the most wasn't just the rumors, it was how detailed they were. These weren't random lies. They sounded like someone who knew me had twisted my own words and actions into something ugly. I tried to ignore it, hoping it would pass, but it didn't. I looked to Thayer for support, but he barely spoke to me anymore. When I brought up what was happening, he shrugged it off like it wasn't important. That wasn't like him. He used to stand up for me no matter what. With Aloan, it was even more confusing. She listened when I told her about the rumors, but she didn't react the way I expected. Instead of defending me, she just stayed quiet, her expression unreadable. It felt like she was holding something back. That silence hurt more than any rumor. For the first time since I arrived at Briar Ridge, I felt truly alone again.